The fisherman's weathered hands gripped the oars as dawn painted the Mediterranean sky in shades of amber and rose. His name was Marco, and he had lived his entire life in the coastal village of Lunaris, where white stone houses climbed steep cliffs and fishing boats bobbed like painted toys in the harbor below. The villagers of Lunaris knew the sea better than they knew their own shadows. They understood her moods, her storms, her generous days, and her cruel ones. Fathers taught sons which waters held the richest catches. Mothers warned daughters never to swim past the ancient lighthouse that stood like a silent guardian at the harbor's edge. For beyond that point, the elders whispered, the ocean belonged to something else, something older than memory itself. The old stories spoke of sirens, beautiful creatures with voices that could steal a man's soul and pull him beneath the waves forever. Sailors claimed to have heard their songs drifting across moonlit waters, melodies so achingly beautiful that strong men wept and forgot their own names. Some said the sirens were vengeful spirits of drowned maidens. Others believed they were ocean goddesses punishing those who disrespected the sea. Most villagers dismissed such tales as superstition, stories to frighten children away from dangerous waters. But the oldest fishermen never laughed at these warnings. They had seen too much. They knew the sea kept secrets in her deepest places. Marco had heard every story 100 times. His grandfather told them beside crackling fires. His father repeated them while mending nets. Marco listened politely but never truly believed. He was a practical man who trusted his hands, his boat, and the rhythm of tides. Magic belonged in children's dreams, not in the real world of salt and struggle. Yet something changed the night his father's boat never returned. A storm had risen without warning, transforming calm waters into mountains of fury. 3 boats went out that morning. Only 2 came back. Search parties found nothing. No wreckage, no bodies, nothing but endless waves and the crying of gulls. Marco's mother grew silent after that. She stopped singing the old songs. She stopped watching the horizon. Within a year, grief took her as surely as the sea had taken her husband. Marco inherited his father's boat, his father's nets, and his father's debts. At 17, he became the youngest captain in Lunaris. The other fishermen pitied him. Some helped when they could, sharing catches when his nets came up empty, teaching him tricks his father never had time to show. But pity does not pay creditors. Pity does not fill empty stomachs. Marco worked harder than anyone. He left harbor before dawn and returned after dark. His hands bled from rope burns. His back ached from hauling nets. Still, it was never enough. The sea that had taken his father seemed determined to take everything else. Fish avoided his nets. Storms found his boat. Equipment broke at the worst possible times. Other fishermen whispered that his family was cursed, that the ocean herself had marked them for misfortune. 10 years passed this way. Marco grew lean and hard, his face weathered beyond his years, his eyes holding the distant look of men who have stopped hoping for better days. He spoke little. He smiled less. The village girls who once blushed when he passed now avoided his gaze. Who would marry a cursed fisherman with nothing but debts and a leaking boat? Marco told himself he did not care. Love was a luxury for men with full nets and warm houses. He had neither. All he had was the sea, and the sea had never loved him back. Then came the night that changed everything. Marco had ventured farther than usual, chasing rumors of a rich fishing ground beyond the old lighthouse. The other captains refused to fish those waters. Too deep, they said, too dangerous, strange currents and hidden rocks, but Marco was desperate. His creditors had given him one final month. After that, they would take his boat, his father's boat, the last thing connecting him to his lost family. So he sailed past the lighthouse as the sun melted into the western horizon. He dropped his nets in waters so deep the bottom might as well have been another world. Night fell like a curtain. Stars emerged, countless and cold. Marco sat alone in his small boat, waiting for dawn, hoping his nets would finally hold the catch that could save him. The sea was perfectly calm, smooth as black glass. No wind stirred, no waves rocked his boat. The silence felt unnatural, as though the entire ocean was holding its breath. Then he heard it. A voice, not words exactly, but something between music and longing, a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. It drifted across the water like mist, wrapping around him, filling his head with melodies he had never heard but somehow already knew. Marco's hands froze on the oars. His heart hammered against his ribs. Every rational thought told him to row away, to flee back to the safety of the harbor, but his body would not obey. The song grew stronger, clearer, impossibly beautiful. It spoke of depths beyond sunlight, of kingdoms beneath the waves, of secrets the ocean whispered only to those brave enough to listen. Marco found himself standing, drawn toward the rail of his boat, leaning out over the dark water as though invisible hands were pulling him forward. Then he saw her. She rose from the depths like a dream taking form. Her skin gleamed pale as pearls in the starlight. Her hair flowed around her like living darkness, adorned with shells and strands of seaweed that sparkled like emeralds. But it was her eyes that held him frozen. They were the color of the deepest ocean, ancient and knowing, filled with both terrible sadness and wild beauty. She was the most magnificent and frightening thing he had ever seen. The siren smiled. Her voice shifted from wordless melody to speech, though her lips barely moved. "Why do you come to my waters, fisherman?" Marco tried to answer, but his voice had abandoned him. She laughed, a sound like waves caressing shore stones. "You seek fish, you seek fortune, you seek to escape the curse that follows your family like a shadow." How could she know these things? Marco's mind raced. Was this a dream? Had he fallen asleep waiting for dawn? The siren drifted closer, her movements fluid and impossible, neither swimming nor floating, but something between. "Your father came to these waters once," he sang while he worked. I listened from below. His voice was kind. Tears burned Marco's eyes. No one had spoken of his father with such gentleness in years. "You knew him." "I know all who sail above my home. Most see only fish and profit. Your father saw beauty. He thanked the sea for every catch. He returned small fish so they might grow. He never took more than he needed." The siren's expression grew sad. "The storm that took him was not my doing. Some forces even we cannot control. But I tried to save him. I sang to guide him toward shore." He would not abandon his crew. He stayed with his sinking ship, helping others into the single lifeboat, ensuring everyone else survived. By the time I reached him, the ocean had already claimed him. Marco's legs nearly gave way. All these years he had blamed the sea, blamed fate, blamed himself for not being old enough, strong enough, brave enough to somehow prevent the tragedy. Now this impossible creature was telling him his father had died a hero. "Why tell me this?" The siren reached out one pale hand, not quite touching his boat. "Because you carry his kindness, though you have buried it beneath anger and pain. Because you deserve to know the truth. And because I have a gift to offer, if you are brave enough to accept it." She gestured toward the water. Marco looked down and gasped. Beneath the surface, glowing faintly in the darkness, he saw them. Fish. Thousands upon thousands, more than he had ever seen in one place, a living river of silver bodies swirling in endless circles. "Fill your nets, take what you need, sell your catch and pay your debts. Return tomorrow night and I will fill them again. For one full moon cycle I will give you fortune beyond any fisherman's dreams." Marco stared at the impossible bounty. This was everything he needed. This was salvation, but years of hardship had taught him suspicion. "What do you want in return?" The siren's smile faded. "Company, conversation. For 1 month, come to these waters each night, speak with me, share your stories, let me remember what it means to connect with the world above the waves." It seemed too simple, too easy. Marco searched her ancient eyes for deception, but found only loneliness, a solitude so profound it made his own isolation seem trivial. "Why me?" "Because you are your father's son. Because kindness recognizes kindness even when buried deep. Because I am tired of being alone." She began to sink back into the darkness. "The choice is yours, fisherman. Accept my offer or sail away. But know this. If you accept, you must keep your word. Come every night for 1 full moon. Miss even a single night and the bargain breaks forever." Before Marco could respond, she vanished beneath the black water. The song faded. The unnatural silence lifted. Suddenly the normal sounds of night returned. Waves lapping, wind whispering, distant calls of seabirds. Marco stood trembling, wondering if exhaustion had conjured hallucinations. Then he looked at his nets. They were straining, nearly breaking, heavy with more fish than should be possible. He hauled them up with shaking hands, his small boat riding dangerously low in the water from the weight of his catch. As dawn broke, Marco sailed back to Lunaris with a fortune in his hold. The village erupted in amazement. Where had he caught such magnificent fish? What secret waters had he discovered? Marco said nothing, selling his catch for more money than he had seen in 5 years. He paid his most pressing debts, bought food, repaired his boat. That night, despite exhaustion, despite every rational voice in his head screaming warnings, he sailed back past the lighthouse. The siren was waiting. She rose from the depths with that same impossible grace, settling herself on a half-submerged rock near his boat. "You returned." "I gave my word," she smiled. "Then speak, fisherman, tell me of your world." At first, Marco struggled. He was not accustomed to conversation, especially with a mythical creature who might devour him at any moment. But the siren listened with such genuine interest that gradually his words came easier. He told her about Lunaris, about the white stone houses and narrow streets, about festivals where the entire village danced in the square. He described the smell of bread baking, the sound of church bells, the way sunlight turned the harbor golden at dawn. The siren listened to everything, asking questions, laughing at his descriptions of village gossip, growing quiet when he spoke of loneliness. When he finished, she shared her own stories. She told him of underwater palaces built from coral and pearl, of gardens where luminescent plants grew in eternal darkness, of creatures so strange and beautiful that human languages had no names for them. She spoke of centuries beneath the waves, of watching empires rise and fall from below, of singing songs that shaped currents and called storms. Her voice carried both wonder and sorrow, the weight of immortal life spent in isolation. "Why are you alone?" Marco asked. The siren's expression darkened. "My sisters and I once filled these waters. We sang together, hunted together, built kingdoms together, but humans feared us. They called us monsters, demons, killers. Hunters came with blessed weapons and sacred oils. They slaughtered us one by one. I am the last of my kind in these waters, the last voice singing the old songs." Marco felt unexpected sympathy. He understood loneliness. He understood being the last of something precious. "I am sorry." The siren looked at him with surprise. "You do not fear me, should I? Most humans do. They believe we lure men to their deaths, that our songs are weapons of murder." Marco considered this. "Do you?" "I could, the magic is there, but I choose not to. My sisters and I sang to communicate, to celebrate, to mourn. Humans heard beauty and assumed malice. They could not imagine that something different from them might not wish them harm." Night after night Marco returned. Each time his nets filled with fish beyond measure. Each time he and the siren talked until dawn threatened. Slowly something unexpected happened. Marco began to smile again. He laughed at her stories of confused octopi and territorial sea turtles. He shared memories of his father, his mother, his childhood dreams. The siren in turn seemed to glow brighter, her songs growing more joyful, her ancient eyes losing some of their sadness. The other fishermen noticed changes in Marco. He greeted them warmly now. He helped mend their nets. He shared his mysterious good fortune, directing them toward productive waters, though never to his secret meeting place. 2 weeks into their bargain, Marco realized something that terrified him. He was falling in love. Not with a woman from his village, not with someone he could marry and build a normal life with, but with an immortal creature of myth who belonged to a world he could never enter. It was impossible. It was madness. Yet every night as he sailed past the lighthouse, his heart raced with anticipation. Every time she rose from the depths, he felt more complete than he had in years. He began bringing her gifts. Fresh fruit from the market, flowers from the hillside, a small mirror so she could see her own beauty. She treasured each offering, especially the mirror, studying her reflection with wonder. "I have not seen my own face in a century. We have no mirrors beneath the waves." One night Marco gathered his courage. "What happens when the moon's cycle ends? When our bargain is complete?" The siren's joy faded. "You return to your life, I return to mine, the magic ends. What if I do not want it to end?" She looked at him with those ancient, knowing eyes. "What are you saying, fisherman?" "My name is Marco, and I am saying that I have found something more valuable than all the fish in the ocean. I have found someone who sees me, truly sees me, not as a cursed fisherman or a desperate debtor, but as myself. I have found someone whose voice makes the stars seem dim. I have found someone I think I love." The siren remained perfectly still. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. "You cannot love me. I am not human. I cannot walk on land. I cannot give you the life you deserve, the family, the future. I do not care about what you cannot give. I care about what you have already given. You returned my hope. You reminded me that beauty still exists in this world. You made me feel less alone." Tears, actual tears, slid down the siren's pale cheeks, dissolving into the salt water. "I have lived for centuries, Marco. I have seen countless humans. None have ever spoken to me this way. None have ever looked past what I am to see who I am. Then let me keep coming, not because of any bargain, but because I choose to, because you choose to." The siren shook her head. "It will only bring you pain. You will grow old while I remain unchanged. You will want things I cannot provide. Eventually you will resent me. Let me make that choice. Let me decide what risks are worth taking." For a long moment the siren said nothing. Then she dove beneath the water. Marco's heart sank, certain he had ruined everything. But she returned moments later, holding something in her hands. It was a pearl, but unlike any pearl he had ever seen. It glowed with inner light, shifting through colors like a captured rainbow. "This is a siren's heart pearl. We create only one in our lifetime. It holds our essence, our magic, our very soul. If you accept this, we will be bound together. You will hear my songs no matter how far you travel. You will know if I am in danger. You will feel what I feel. But the binding works both ways. I will feel your joy and your pain. I will know your heart as you will know mine. And if you die, part of me dies with you." She held the pearl toward him. "This is not a gift to accept lightly. Think carefully, Marco. A human life is brief. You ask me to love you knowing I will lose you. You ask me to experience the grief I have spent centuries avoiding." Marco took the pearl. It was warm in his palm, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. "I cannot promise forever. I can only promise now. Is that enough?" The siren smiled through her tears. It will have to be. The moment Marco closed his fingers around the pearl, light exploded around them. He felt a rush of emotion so powerful it drove him to his knees. Joy and sorrow, hope and fear, love and loneliness, all the feelings the siren had accumulated over centuries flooded through him. And he knew she felt his emotions too, his determination, his fierce affection, his bone-deep loneliness finally easing. When the light faded, everything had changed. Marco could hear her song even when she was silent, a constant, gentle melody at the edge of his awareness. He could sense her presence like a compass always pointing home. The remaining 2 weeks of their bargain passed in a dream. Marco's nets continued to overflow, but he barely noticed. His wealth grew, but it meant nothing compared to the hours spent talking with the siren, learning her true name, Thessaly, teaching her human songs, sharing silence as comfortable as conversation. The villagers noticed his transformation. Some whispered that he had found a sweetheart. Others claimed he had discovered a secret fishing ground. None guessed the truth. How could they? Who would believe that the cursed fisherman had fallen in love with the last siren of the Mediterranean? Happiness, Marco learned, always attracts attention. And attention can be dangerous. One of his creditors, a cruel man named Salvator who had profited from Marco's desperation for years, grew suspicious. He followed Marco one night, staying far enough behind to avoid detection, close enough to see him sail past the lighthouse into forbidden waters. Salvator watched from the darkness as Thessaly rose from the waves. He heard her impossible voice. He saw the way she and Marco spoke like old lovers. And he understood immediately what he was witnessing. Not love, not friendship, but opportunity. Salvator returned to the village and went directly to the mayor's house. He spoke of monsters in the deep waters, of sirens that had enchanted poor Marco, of danger to every fisherman in Lunaris. The mayor, an old man who remembered the ancient stories, grew pale. If a siren truly lived in their waters, no one was safe. The creature might lure entire fleets to their doom. Something had to be done. Within 2 days, a plan formed. The village would hire a hunter, a specialist in dealing with supernatural threats. Such men existed, traveling from town to town, offering their services to communities plagued by vampires, werewolves, or creatures from the deep. They were expensive, but the mayor convinced the village council that safety was worth any price. Marco knew nothing of these plans. He sailed out that night as always, his heart light, eager to see Thessaly. But she did not rise to meet him. He waited, calling her name, singing the songs she had taught him. Nothing. Then he felt it through their bond. Terror. Pain. She was trapped somehow, crying out for help. Marco dove into the water without hesitation, following the pull of their connection down into darkness. His lungs burned, his vision blurred. Just when he thought he would drown, he found her. She was caught in a net, not an ordinary fishing net, but something woven with silver threads and covered in strange symbols. The more she struggled, the tighter it drew. Marco tore at the net with bleeding fingers, but the enchanted cords would not break. Thessaly's song had become a wail of agony. The silver was burning her, poisoning her. Marco's mind raced. He could not break the net, he could not cut it, but perhaps he could untie it. His father had taught him every knot used by fishermen. His fingers worked frantically, finding the net's anchoring points, loosening the complex knots even as his lungs screamed for air. One knot released, then another. The net began to loosen. Thessaly slipped free just as Marco's vision started to fade. She grabbed him, her powerful arms wrapping around his chest, and shot toward the surface. They broke into the air together, Marco gasping and coughing, Thessaly burned and weakened, but alive. "Who did this?" Marco demanded. "Hunters, I felt their magic in the water, they know about me." Fear flooded through their bond. "You have to leave these waters, go somewhere safe." "And leave you? They will kill you to get to me, I will not let that happen." Marco held her face in his hands. "I will not abandon you, we face this together." But they had no time to plan. Lights appeared on the water, boats approaching, many boats filled with villagers carrying torches and weapons. At the front stood a man Marco had never seen before, tall and grim, holding a long spear that gleamed with the same silver light as the net, the hunter. "There!" someone shouted. "The siren and the fisherman!" The boats surrounded them. Marco positioned himself between Thessaly and the hunter. "She has done nothing wrong, she has harmed no one," the mayor's voice called out. "She has bewitched you, Marco. We are here to save you and protect the village." "I am not bewitched, I am in love." Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. The hunter raised his spear. "Love or enchantment, it matters not. Sirens are creatures of darkness. She must be destroyed." "No," Marco spread his arms wide. "You will have to kill me first." The hunter's expression never changed. "If necessary." He drew back his arm to throw. Time seemed to slow. Marco saw the spear leaving the hunter's hand, saw its trajectory, knew it would strike true. He prepared to die, hoping his sacrifice might give Thessaly time to escape. But she was faster. Thessaly surged upward, her powerful tail launching her from the water. She twisted in midair, her body shielding Marco as the spear struck. The silver point pierced her chest, driving deep, glowing with terrible light. She gasped, her song becoming a cry of pure anguish. Marco caught her as she fell, her blood, luminescent and strange, spilling into the dark water. No, no, no. Marco pressed his hands against the wound, trying to stop the bleeding, knowing it was useless. Through their bond, he felt her life fading, felt her pain, felt her love for him burning bright even as everything else dimmed. Marco, her voice was barely a whisper. Take the pearl, keep it safe. As long as it exists, part of me remains. You are not dying, I will not let you die. You cannot stop this, but you can remember, you can tell our story. You can prove that love existed between our worlds. Her hand touched his face one final time. Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for making my last days the happiest of my eternal life. The light in her eyes faded. Her body became heavy in his arms, and Marco felt something inside himself shatter. Through their bond, he experienced her death as though dying himself. The song that had lived at the edge of his awareness went silent. The presence that had become his constant companion vanished. He was alone again, more completely alone than ever before, because now he knew exactly what he had lost. A sound emerged from Marco's throat, not words, but something between a scream and a song, raw grief-given voice. The watching villagers fell silent, many weeping, finally understanding that what they had witnessed was not the destruction of a monster, but the murder of love itself. The hunter reached for Thessaly's body. Marco's hand shot out, gripping the man's wrist with desperate strength. Touch her and I will drag you into the depths myself. Something in Marco's eyes made the hunter step back. The mayor spoke quietly. Let him grieve. We have done what we came to do. The boats withdrew, leaving Marco alone with Thessaly's body cradled in his arms. He held her until dawn, singing every song she had taught him, weeping until he had no tears left. As the sun rose, her body began to dissolve, transforming into foam and light, returning to the sea that had birthed her. Within moments, nothing remained except the pearl still glowing in Marco's pocket. The villagers expected him to return to normal life. They expected him to thank them eventually for breaking the Siren's enchantment. Instead, Marco sold everything. His boat, his house, all the wealth Thessaly's magic had provided. He kept only the clothes on his back and the pearl around his neck. He walked away from Lunaris and never looked back. For years, he wandered the coast, moving from village to village, working as a fisherman, a dock hand, whatever would keep him near the ocean. Every night he sat by the water and sang Thessaly's songs. He told their story to anyone who would listen. Most thought him mad, some pitied him, a few understood. Decades passed. Marco's hair turned white. His hands grew gnarled, his back bent, but he never stopped singing, he never stopped remembering. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the moon was full, he swore he could still hear her voice carried on the waves, still feel the faint echo of their bond. The pearl around his neck never dimmed, never faded, a constant reminder that love, true love, transcends the boundaries between worlds. On his final night, Marco was very old, his body worn out from years of wandering. He sat on a beach he did not know the name of, watching the sun set over the endless water. He held the pearl in his weathered hand, feeling its warmth, its gentle pulse. I kept my promise, he whispered to the waves. I remembered. I told our story. I proved that what we had was real. As darkness fell, he walked into the ocean. The water welcomed him like an old friend, rising around his waist, his chest, his shoulders. He did not struggle. He did not fear. He simply walked forward, the pearl glowing brighter with each step until the sea closed over his head. Fishermen found his body the next morning, washed up on the shore, a peaceful smile on his weathered face. But the pearl was gone. Some said the ocean had reclaimed it. Others believed it had dissolved with his final breath. But in the deepest parts of the Mediterranean, where sunlight never reaches and ancient magic still dwells, a new song began. It was Thessaly's voice, no longer alone, joined now by another, rough and human and filled with joy. Two songs intertwining, two souls reunited, singing together in the eternal darkness. And on quiet nights when the moon is full and the sea is calm, fishermen still report hearing music drifting across the water. Not a single voice, but two, harmonizing in a melody that speaks of love that transcends death, of bonds that cannot be broken, of the truth that the deepest magic is not found in enchanted nets or immortal life, but in the simple, profound act of truly seeing another soul and choosing to love it, no matter the cost. The village of Lunaris still exists. The white stone houses still climb the cliffs. Fishermen still sail out each morning, but they no longer speak of sirens as monsters. They tell a different story now, passed from generation to generation. They tell of Marco and Thessaly, of a love that bridged two worlds, of a sacrifice that proved the greatest treasures are not gold or fortune, but connection, understanding, and the courage to love what others fear. And they say that if you sail past the old lighthouse on the anniversary of Thessaly's death, you might see something miraculous. A glowing pearl rising from the depths, floating on the surface for just a moment before sinking back into darkness. A reminder that love, true love, never truly dies. It simply transforms, becoming part of the eternal song of the sea, waiting for those brave enough to listen.